All right, so we are beginning to march through our geometry unit, and a lot of these are going to be just filled with formulas. You're going to need to use these formulas in order to solve more complicated problems, multi-step problems. So hang on, the formulas are rather easy, but sometimes the problem solving can get tricky. Always go back to what you know. A lot of you might remember the area of a triangle. And I put that over here, but I want you to go on a thinking path with me for just a moment. We learned in 10.1 that the area of a parallelogram is base times height. And here I have my base is 10 meters and my height is 6. So obviously what we are going to do is just multiply those together. I'm going to do base equals 10. And so it's easy to see that it's going to be 60 meters squared. That little 2 is very important. Square units are very important. Okay, so we know that about a parallelogram, and what I am going to do is show you this dotted green line where I have divided this parallelogram into two congruent triangles. So that is why the area of a triangle is base times height, and I always learned it base times height with my vernaculum divided by 2, or a lot of the time you see it in a textbook is 1/2 times base times height. Either way is just fine. So keep this starred, put this in your memory. You will use this throughout your entire math career. So we are going to work on finding the area of a figure that is a little bit more complicated. So here we have a parallelogram, which is a rectangle, but it is a parallelogram, and then we have the triangle off to the side. This is multi-step. It is important that you do show your steps on this, especially on quizzes and tests, and you're going to want to on your daily work too. So a lot of times I just draw off to the side, here's my parallelogram and here's my triangle, and I know I'm going to add them up. So the area of my parallelogram is 6 feet times 4 feet. Okay, so 6 times 4 is obviously 24, and then it would be feet squared, right? Off to the side, don't forget that. And then we have to figure out this little tacked on area of this triangle. Well, this is 3 feet, and we know that the height from over here is 4 feet. So 3 times 4 is 12. So off to the side, I'm going to put 12, but I have to divide it by 2. Okay, so 12 divided by 2 equals 6. The biggest mistake people make is they forget to do that divided by 2. So over here, I am going to put 6 and it's feet squared. And when we add both of those up, I get 30 feet squared. The other thing that I've seen students do, if you really like to draw and redraw the figure, a scale model kind of, you can put 24 feet squared here to keep track of the information, and you can put a 6 feet squared here. Okay, so there is the area of a more complex figure than we're used to. Okay, if you think that you can try this one on your own, we can reason through it in a moment. If we have the area of a triangle and it's 36 inches squared and the base is 8 inches, what is the height? So now if you see here, we know A up here. We know A, we're looking for H. So the biggest piece of advice I can give you is to always start out with the formula. Just write it out. So when you substitute in it, you substitute it in the right spot. I know my area is 36 and then the 1/2 stays the same. I know my base is 8, but I don't know my height. These are all multiplied together, so I know, I'm going to move it down here, I know 36 equals, I'm going to combine these two. 1/2 of 8 is 4 times whatever the height is. Well, here's where it gets really nice, because all I need to do is divide both sides by a 4. So if I divide this by a 4, I get 1, and if I divide this by a 4, I get 9. Okay, so 4 times 9 is going to equal 36, but we're not done yet. We need to label that 9. It needs to be labeled inches. It will be incorrect on your assignment and on your test if you do not label. It's super important that you do that, whatever unit you're working in, and that can get confusing too. With feet, we have kilometers and we have inches coming up. All right, I have a couple of questions for you. I'm going to put those up, and then we are going to pause the video, and I will put the arithmetic and everything up. I'm noticing it's not up the way I like it. There we go. So take a look and copy those down, and then press resume or start when you're ready to see the answers. Okay, so the very first one, I have written the formula up here. I have substituted right here, area equals 1/2 times 12 times 5, and when I multiply all those together, you can do them in any order, so you can do 12 times 5 is 60, and half of that is 30, or you can do 1/2 times 12 is 6, times 5 is 30. Either way, you get to 30 kilometers squared. Notice my writing all of my steps here. This one, I just used this right up here, and I substituted in area equals 1/2 times 6 times 4. Again, you can do half of 6 times 4 is 12. You can do 6 times 4 is 24, and then half of that still equals 12 inches squared. Down here is a little bit more complicated. You'll notice what I did down here is I drew my little pictures like I like to do. So I found this first, which is 10 times 4, which is 40. I also put it right up here. And then the second one, a little bit more complicated, 1/2 times 10 times 3, and that is 15 meters squared, and you could put a little 15 in here. And then down below I drew a little picture, and I did 40 plus 15 is 55 meters squared. Don't forget the label. Moving down to our last one. Again, I rewrote the formula. We need to commit that one to memory. So I knew that my area was 45, and that equaled 1/2 of 10 times some number, the height. And so I substituted, I multiplied those two together, and I got 45 equals 5 times h. And I knew that 5 times 9 is 45, or I could divide both sides by 5. So 9 feet is what the height equals right there. You may run into some that require you to multiply or even sometimes divide by decimal. So don't forget our previous units. Use your math notebooks if you need to remember where that decimal point goes when you're multiplying or dividing. Should be a pretty straightforward lesson. See me if you have any questions, but also consult your notes and then the examples in the book. Good luck to you all.